So the song, even before the release of the music video in full, a lot of people already got some clue that this was partly inspired by Pygmalion, which is a Greek myth, which came from the Greek mythology. This was part of Ovid's Metamorphosis. Okay, so Pygmalion was a talented sculptor who lived in the island of Cyprus. The one thing about him, about Pygmalion, is that he doesn't like people. So he finds specifically women. He doesn't like the flaws. He sees all the flaws and he doesn't like them. But he's a great artist. Specifically, he's a sculptor. So what he does is that he would sculpt his ideal woman. He sculpted his ideal woman, and it because it was everything that he wanted. The sculpted woman is everything that he imagined it to be. He actually started falling in love with this. So he would bring her gifts. So this was still a statue. Remember, when the girl was still a statue, he would bring her gifts and would even kiss her. So yes, it's a little awkward, but remember, it's Greek mythology. Greek mythology, there's a lot of great stories, but they are weird. So in normal standards. So he would go home, give gifts, give the statue gifts, kiss the statue. And he also started wishing for this statue to actually come to life, because this is the perfect woman for him. That's what he thinks. So during a festival honoring Aphrodite, Pygmalion prayed that Aphrodite, gives him a wife as perfect as his statue. Okay, so that was his prayer. Like, please, Aphrodite, can you just give me a wife exactly like the statue that I sculpted? That's his prayer. Now, Aphrodite, being the goddess of love, has a soft spot for hopeless romantics, right? And so when she saw how sincere and, I guess, driven Pygmalion is to actually make the fi- find his love, find the love of his life, he decided to grant his wish. Now, remember, Pygmalion's actual wish is to find a woman that is exactly like the statue that he sculpted. That was his prayer. So when Aphrodite granted his wish, there was a twist. Instead of simply granting him a wife as perfect as his statue, as he had prayed, Aphrodite took his wish quite literally and brought the statue itself to life. So when Pygmalion came home and kissed the statue, it felt warm and then it started moving. And so he felt elated, maybe a little bit freaked out. But her name, he named her Galatea. Now, in depending on what story you're reading, what version you're reading, they actually, in some versions, they actually lived happily ever after and actually had an offspring. So, but I do think that the story is just an inspiration. But V actually created his own version. He created his own story. He created his own mythology. Okay, so these are some of the best theories that I found on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Number one, this V, the one that we constantly saw in the entirety of the music video, the one wearing red, the one who sculpted the girl, he was actually a creation. So he is a statue himself who was brought to life. So all of the things that he was experiencing and seeing, this all of this were his imagination. And he made up a world that was perfect for him. Because remember, he didn't like people, he didn't like the world. He has this vision of what perfection is. And so all of these things that he was seeing that made him happy, all of this were actually just his imagination. And the one that came in later, the one that walked in wearing the dark jacket, or jacket, that was actually the real V. He was the original sculptor. And he came back to pull this V out of his delusion. Okay, so that was, I think that was um a solid theory. Theory number two, they are all actually creations, including this one. So this V and this V are just creations. They are both statues that were actually brought to life. And the proof is that there was a sequence, there was a series of frames, series of scenes where it felt like, so this one, from here, there was a red flash of light, and then him sort of feeling his own form. And then you can see him slowly, aggressively s- making the sculpture to trace his own image and form. And then um, eventually he broke the statue. And that is why, and so this one breaking, that is why he was bleeding, because this was him. So all of them were actually just all creations. Now, my theory is a mix of both. I think those were two solid theories. There's several others, but I think those were two solid theories. My theory is a mix of both. One, I think this V, the one that we saw the most in the entire music video, is that this he was actually the statue that Aphrodite brought to life. Okay, so he was the statue. He was the one praying to Aphrodite, and he was the one that was brought to life. What happened was this V sculpted everything according to his own image because he felt like that is his interpretation of perfection. So his world, his form, his beauty, that is his image of perfection. And that is why when he prayed to Aphrodite, please make somebody brought this statue back to life. It was he was actually he sculpted himself, and so that's what Aphrodite gave him himself. So sculptor V, when all of this happened, he actually left. He left the mansion and he left the sculpted V, the statue that was brought to life in the mansion. That is why there is a scene where V, the sculptor, the original V, was driving back into the mansion, right? So because he left the copy, the V, that is a copy of him, but they remain connected and they are one and the same. So what the other person feels, the other person also feels. So in this scene, when the V that Aphrodite brought back to life, when he broke the statue, he felt it. So that's why he jerked back. He was sleeping and he jerked back and he felt like there's something wrong. And that was that moment when he felt sculpted V gave in to his delusion. So he woke up and drove back into the mansion so that he can pull the sculpted V out of his delusion. Now, do remember that there are two male voices in the song, and that I think is an important detail that completes the story. These two are doomed to be together forever in each other's paradise. So when they were singing, I'll be with you until the spring runs by and the summer starts to burn, they're actually singing it to each other because they are the two people that are meant to be together in this damnation. So it's very dark. My interpretation is very dark. But um, do remember that it seems that V actually has a very consistent theme across his different music videos. There seems to be an effort. He always seems to project an alternative version of himself or an alternative world. In Friends, at the end, he ended up actually meeting himself, right? That he was actually falling in love with, like, well, not falling in love with himself, but actually the real love is himself, the love for himself. And even in Slow Dancing, at least in my interpretation, he created this other world in his head where he lives because he wants to create a different world for himself. I feel that that is a consistent theme, and that added to, I guess, that is another factor on why my interpretation is that way. Now, the other thing that we do need to remember, this is not in relation to the music video anymore, but just in general, V as an artist. One thing that we do need to remember is that the music video is 6 minutes long. And in the age of TikTok, where everything is cramped into 1 minute, or songs are always under 3 minutes, so that they can, because it allows the audience to stream more times than usual. He decided he was going to create a 6 minute long music video. And I think that's an important indicator, as an important thing for us to consider in looking at V as an artist. He's not here for fad, he's not here for TikTok success, he's not here for trends, he's here for the art. And then remember, this is jazz R&B, very very slow song, and then he added a different kind of story that should give you an idea on the kind of artistry he is pursuing. He really is an artist, not a he's not here for fame, he's not here for trends, he's here for the art. The other thing is that all of his music videos, from the time that he went solo and started his solo career, he has always inspired critical thinking. He has never done a music video where it's just, okay, look at me dancing, or here, this is me looking good. He always looks good, by the way. But it always inspires critical thinking. There is always a story, and it's up to us. And he is encouraging everybody to actually interpret the story. So that is my interpretation. I want to know yours. Also, there is a weird thing on YouTube, where whenever I upload my live after, and the live chat doesn't actually show up. I don't know what's up with that. I never change anything in my setting. I always make sure that the live chat replay is there, but I don't know what's happening. Anyway, I'm trying to make it more clear when I am reading comments, so that those that are going to watch the live stream after will know that I'm actually reading comments and not just um, stating my own thoughts. Okay, I'm going to read comments. All right. So the question is, what about the woman? The woman, I think, is just his imagination. That the Based on my interpretation, I'm going to assume that you're asking about my interpretation. I think the woman is actually, so when, okay, let's just go back. So when the V that came after at the end, when he was a sculptor, he doesn't like Pygmalion, he doesn't like people and whatever. And so he created all of his sculptures, he created to be an exact copy of himself, and he probably wasn't even aware of it, because that for him is perfection. And so when he prayed to Aphrodite to grant his wish to have someone that is exactly like him, what happened was that, okay, so Aphrodite was like, well, this is your sculpture, you love it, so here you go. So now there's two of him, and I think he realized that later, and I think that sort of woke him up and sort of made him realize the horror that he created. So he left the mansion, and he left the copy of him in the mansion. Now this copy of him, remember, is just like him, right? Because he was molded into his image. And so his tendencies, the V in the mansion, his tendencies are the same as the tendency of the original V. And the original V's tendency is to look for perfection. So that's what he created. So when he started creating all of the statues, when he started sculpting, he was still sculpting himself. He simply wasn't aware of it, that he was doing it. So in that moment, when he was getting frantic, when the delusions were starting to come into him, and he broke the statue, That's what woke up the original V. So everything that we were seeing, that's all him. He just wasn't aware of it. Just like the original V wasn't aware that he was creating a sculpture that is an exact copy of himself. Okay, is that clear? um, I think one is Kim Tae-young and the other persona is V. Could be. Okay, so that is according to RJ722. I think one is Kim Tae-young and the other persona is V. Celeste said maybe he is bleeding because he's coming to the realization of what he asked for and who he has become. It could be that. I do think it's more symbolic than it is actually physical. I do think that this was when usually things stop, right? Things stop when you are in pain. And the most physical manifestation of pain is blood. So when you are bleeding, that's usually when things stop. Like when you're working and you get injured, or sorry, in a sport, when you get injured, you stop. Like everything is a reset. So I feel that the blood dripping from his head is actually more symbolic than it is that he was in that moment of realization, that pain that forced the original V to come back to pull him out of his delusion. There's so much that goes, according to Pink Crystal, there's so much that goes into making a single video. I'd love to take a peek into V's brain to see how the process how he processes things. Everything he does comes out amazing. Absolutely. I mean, I would love to sit down and just, like, what the hell were you thinking? Explain it to me. I would love to do that. Exactly. So Marcella said he is sculpting. I lost you. Okay. Bea, you brought up a connection in second theory that I hadn't made myself with broken mask and the dark V's trail of blood in his head.